Greetings folks, if you click on this video you probably know what I'm going to be talking about, but I'm going to spell it out for you because I'm being nice, okay? So this video is going to be about me explaining Billford in every single way, like I'm going to be giving you clues, context, all of that. And why I'm doing this? Because I have seen a lot of people, especially while responding to fanners on Tumblr and Instagram and X, saying that Billford or like not understanding why people have been claiming that Billford is now canon. So, because of all of these people that are a little bit lost, I'm going to be giving all of the clues, all of the context, all that is necessary to see where people that are shipping Billford are coming from. So, without further ado, I'm going to start with the video. A week ago, I got in my mail the Book of Bill, and like any sane person on the Gravity Falls fandom, I started reading it over and over again until I could get a better context of the whole Billford situation. That got me into making annotations, making a lot of citations about all of this and why are people shipping these two old men. And obviously, all of this helped me to do this video. I'm actually currently showing you that I do own the book, and this is because I don't want people coming at me like, you haven't even read the book. No, I read it a lot, like 3 times I think. Like all of it 3 times, then I started going page by page, trying to see if I could get anything more. So yeah, I think I'm like maybe a little bit qualified to talk about this, so yeah. Wait! Before continuing on this video, I just want to say that a lot of things that I mentioned, a lot of clues and context didn't come originally from my mind. I actually used a lot of citations from people from Reddit and YouTube and even some citations from TikTok. So because of this, I made a list of sources of all the people that previously have established these things that I'm going to mention before and don't actually are connected to things that I found on my own on the Book of Bill. Obviously, there are a lot of things that I did research on my own and that came to the conclusions myself, but a lot of them, like a great deal of them, didn't come from my mind. So please go to the original authors of these ideas and give them some thanks for my part. So yeah, that's all. This might come as a shock for people who are not involved or aware of queer history in media, but it's no strange that queer couples have always been victims of censorship. I mean, bans as well as hateful tropes like the "bury your gay" situations have always existed, especially since queer media and all of the type of cinema have been created with the purpose of putting maybe people who are not heterosexual in a romantic situation. It's precisely because of this that queer subtext is highly used in most TV shows, animations, yada yada. Gravity Falls itself has been censored throughout the 2nd season regarding queer content. The author, Alex Hirsch, explicitly explained how one scene in the episode The Love of God described a few couples at Chris's dinner falling in love thanks to Cupid's magic, one of them supposedly 2 lovable old ladies. Alex said, when one of our storyboard artists presented the scene to me, she had made one of the couples 2 lovable old ladies. He continued, it was sweet and casual, and I knew instantly that it was going to turn into a huge fight with Disney, so naturally I left it in. Obviously, Disney didn't take this as something to be happy about, and they censor all of the, like, that scene in particular, and ask Alex to not try to include those sort of couples because it could piss a lot of homophobic parents. We know who is going to lose on this situation, so obviously Alex had to not put that scene, but obviously he was greatly mad, and this is not even the first time that Disney has been censoring this type of things. And Gravity Falls is not the only show that suffered because of this. Adventure Time, Steven Universe, as well as many others couldn't put queer representation not because the authors didn't want it, not because the artists didn't want it, not even because the audience didn't want it, but just because the companies couldn't allow a part of their income be that of their consumers that could be offended or disgusted with what they were seeing. Be that as it may, companies' sole purpose is making profit, so I will let you do the math to see who ends up losing in this situation. It's because of this that the fandom trying to find clues or context for something to be queer has been very popular during the 21st century. I could even say that it's a way for us queer people to express ourselves and understand how queer relationships work in the industry of entertainment. Now that that's settled, let's talk about Billford. Bill Cipher is a character from Gravity Falls. He's from the dimension Euclidia, which he previously destroyed. He used to exist only in the mindscape and has a history of wanting to manipulate people into allowing him to make deals with them so to possess them, and used to his own advantages. Personality-wise, he's a megalomaniac, a deceiver, and is often portrayed in a playful manner, leaving aside all the creepy remarks he often makes. With all this information, it might seem very unlikely or even impossible for him to share any romantic feelings, let alone for a human. However, we know thanks to the fact that he did used to have parents, that romance as a whole might not be that out of the blue for Bill. What we do know is that him getting involved in any sort of romantic relationship will end up being chaotic, if not counterproductive, thanks to him being literally obsessed with himself and ruling the existence of thousands of universes. However, and even though it might sound contradictory, he does seem to show a certain interest in one character throughout the series, and that is Stanford Pines, your local scientist or brainiac like Bill likes to call him. He's a paranormal investigator and one of the most complex and important side characters in Gravity Falls. He also has the oddity of having 6 fingers, which plays a big part in his childhood since him and his brother will often get bullied because of this. Well, not him and his brother, but specifically him. And, well, Stanley got bullied for other reasons, but you already know the story. This ended up with him deciding to investigate oddities and finding ways to comprehend them. One thing left to another, which left them finding in a cave the engravings of how to summon Bill's cipher. Even though there were multiple warnings, he decided to ignore all of this and make the summoning. Needless to say that after that, Bill manipulated him so that he could create a portal between dimensions. Having to know about how could this play an important part into him probably being attracted to Bill in not a platonic sense, is that he also might have been a recluse in the romance area. Like, even in Gravity Falls, we only see him, when he was introduced, trying to flirt with someone just once, and the whole encounter was very weird. But yeah, like later in the Book of Bill, I know I shouldn't be getting into the Book of Bill, but I feel this is important. It is established that he doesn't actually know what he's even attracted to. Bill explains he constantly dreams of a pop quiz asking him, "What are you attracted to?" Which Ford always answers, "I'm attracted to logic and preparation." This obviously makes him someone who is not really interested in the romance department. It could also be him being romantic or asexual, or maybe both of them. Whatever is the case, he's troubled in this specific aspect, which plays an important part in Bill and Ford's relationship because it establishes his unknown feelings towards people. Maybe even it's the reason why he was so quick to actually trust Bill, because he doesn't actually connect with people that much. He even says at some point that he thought he might be out of this, maybe an alien, because he doesn't feel like him being around people always or never were for him. Even someone as Fiddleford always felt like not the ideal partner for him, which might be why he was so quick to build a relationship with Bill. Maybe even explains why he's so recluse around others, which he often is seen throughout the series being like. Now, if things ended up like this and the only type of relationship these two had during that time could enter into the so-called label of partnership, this video wouldn't exist. However, that's not the case. Now that we know the characters, now that we know a little bit about the background of the relationship, let's talk about their relationship now and how it evolved to what is now, which is a little bit sad if you consider they were once friends. But probably it was necessary. So, even before the Book of Bill dropped, I feel like there was a lot of signals, there were a lot of signals that Bill and Ford's relationship was far away from being strictly platonic. Some examples could be the fact that during their first interactions in Gravity Falls, after Bill betrayed him and everything, even though Bill is really not known for not caring about anything or anyone, he was seen constantly trying to get out a race out of Ford, almost provoking him. The fact that he offered him to rule the world by his side was also something that kind of shows he cared. And I know this might seem weird because if you see it from afar without understanding Bill as a character, you might think, oh yeah, it's just normal behavior from him, but it's actually not. All of his deals, Gideon, Mabel, Dipper, have always been superficial. He doesn't want to get that involved with his counterpartner when making a deal. Maybe he wants you to think he cares, but he doesn't actually care in the end. With Ford now, it wasn't like that. He was also craving to find someone that could actually understand him. And we see that a lot during their encounters, during how Bill behaved around Ford. Maybe the series might seem as ambiguous, but if you look past that, it really shows that Bill was craving to find someone he could actually relate to. Maybe even find someone that just not puppeteer, but a partner for him to spend all eternity with, conquering the universes. He is a megalomaniac, so maybe that explains why he's so focused on power instead of building relationships. But the thing is that there was something. Because, I mean, the fact that he offered him to rule the world by his size was also something that kind of shows he cared, is something important. Some might argue that he was just trying to manipulate Ford into giving him the code, but we know that is not true, because I mean, even if Bill is constantly bragging and pleading to him to actually listen with post-its that was during the 80s, but you understand the deal, or anything to make Ford get his attention for making a portal, could be shadowed down into him actually not caring for him, but caring for the portal. But I feel like there is a line that you can cross when you actually care about someone and when you just want him to make him listen to you. Now, how does this relate to the situation? Well, it doesn't compare anything. You can care about someone. I can care, for example, about my great turtle that I have as a pet. That doesn't mean I want to spend eternity with my turtle. Maybe yes, but you understand the deal. And I mean, he might have considered for one of his closest friends, and maybe he still does by the way he greets him by saying old pal instead of just saying or calling him Sixer. Even though Ford is shown as completely annoyed and pissed at Bill seems to be more forward into fixing the relationship, almost like he longed for whatever they used to have to come back. Now that this is settled, let's talk about something else that has been sitting in my mind lately. Bill during the show uses a lot of nicknames to describe everyone. We know that how he describes Mabel as shooting star, how he describes Tipper as pine tree, and how he describes almost everyone he knows as something. Maybe just a word, maybe two, like for example, how he calls Wendy Red, and that's it. But we also know that in this way it might be a coping way for him to know the real names, and a way for Bill to not want to interact with people and get to know them more than he does, because he wants to get away from them. The difference between him and Ford's relationships is that he still uses nicknames for Ford, but there are two things. They are multiple, and instead of making fun of him or just describing something from his appearance, it's more like endearing terms, like Sixer, Brainiac, IQ, and 4C. Those are maybe, like Brainiac proves that he's intelligent, IQ is because he has a high IQ, 4C is just a way to call Ford, like from a more cutesy way, like instead of 440, like a nickname. And Sixer is something that Stanley calls him, which is a way like to describe that he has 6 fingers, but he actually, like during all of this, we actually see Bill, instead of trying to like say that Ford is like this, it makes him deformed, or that he has like appendix deformity. It is more like a way for him to say that he connects to Ford because he also has his own oddities, which I found very endearing, to say the least. I mean, it's not ideal, but at least it's better than calling him just, glasses or something like that. Not to mention that multiple times he decides to use his old name, implying that he does know how Stanford is called. I truly believe that this behavior is strictly reserved for Ford, or at least I haven't seen him using the full name or multiple names, or even like trying to provoke someone aside from Ford, or at least that I know of. He seems to stick with fewer nicknames with everyone, and even goes as far as to only call him someone when he wants to, or even putting like just things related to the appearance of someone. With Ford he focuses more about his personality, his attributes, etc. The fact that he also is shown to act very different when he's with Ford rather than when he's alone also shows a great doses of care for him. I don't want to imply that Bill's interest in Ford is in any way healthy. It is not, but I don't think it's platonic either. I'm going to talk more about this later in the video, but for now I'm just going to state some facts. Even though Ford wasn't the first scientist that Bill contacted to build him a portal, I feel like he was the one that best connected with him. I could even argue that he feels attracted to Ford since both of them share an oddity, like I said before. In both of their hometowns, they were seen as freaks, which is something that Bill tries to promote often when he presents himself, but is also something that should have, Bill, his character, more complexity. Also, the fact that both of them had great ambitions played an important factor as to why Bill seemed charmed with Ford. Even Fiddleford, who was another capable scientist, never interested Bill. This might do with Fiddleford's animosity towards Bill, but in general, Bill is never shown to actually care enough to establish relationships or even share about his past with anyone but Ford. When Ford asked him that he wanted to, when Ford tried to contact Bill and actually share some backstories about them, Bill offered to tell him that his dimension was destroyed by what Bill called a monster, which is something that Bill has never shared with anyone in that situation. We know he talked about this with his henchmaniacs, but with Ford, no. With Ford, it was like a decision to explain to Ford that something happened to his dimension to show vulnerability. And not only that, but when Ford asked and proposed to hunt this monster for him, Bill said, "It will eat you alive," saying that if Ford at any moment learned about the truth about Bill, he was not going to stand it. Bill was going to defeat him because Bill fears to be close to anyone in that way. I mean, it could only seem as another way of Bill to make Ford empathize with his character for obvious ulterior motives, but I think there is more to it. Also, the fact that when Ford discovered the truth, instead of continuing manipulating him or lying, he decided to put Ford into his side and state the facts. Almost like he expected Ford to join him and leave his dimension behind. I reason that this is a parallel as to how Bill, after finding his dimension was plain and couldn't see the star, opted to expand it ending in him destroying his dimension. It is plausible that Bill thought Ford's reaction would be the same, but was surprised to find that Ford wasn't willing to sacrifice his dimension like Bill had done to his. All of these variables play an important part in the relationship, which is why I do think Bill saw Ford as more than a partner or ally, but someone he could actually rule the universe with. Now going with Ford. He, unlike Bill, absolutely despises everything that has to do with the demon. But now, was he always like this? No. Adoration is the word I will use to describe Ford's previous sentiments surrounding Bill. Ford is very easily influenced by others. It is shown throughout the series that he cares about others' opinions a great deal. He has a knack for getting praise, so when a so-called god started praising him, he went into straight-up adoration. His house, everything, he started to proclaim every single part of himself to Bill, even as far as to getting tattooed for his so-called devotion. He believed in Bill, and called him a partner, his muse if anything. He fell right into Bill's trap, because he was longing to be admired by someone, anyone! But then he started caring for the specific attention of Bill's cipher. This wasn't in any way healthy, not even a bit, since Bill was essentially using Ford and Ford was fetching for every little sweet word he could get. However, it doesn't escape the fact that Ford wanted a relationship with Bill that was long away from being merely a puppet. He wanted to be respected by him, even admired. Something tells me he cared deeply about Bill in a way he hadn't with anyone because he created this idea of him as some sort of creator that was giving him all the attention that he didn't need but deserved. We don't get a lot of evidence of Ford's previous thoughts or anything really from while he was serving Bill on the series. We only get a glimpse of his previous relationship with him and a lot of hate statements towards the demon. But lucky for us, in the book of Bill we do see his previous behavior in a more peculiar way. Now, all of this information, everything brings us here. I feel like the Book of Bill was the last hint of evidence that filled the glass and made it drop, spilling all the dark secrets that were hidden in Bill and Ford's relationship. Because seeing Bill and Ford interactions before reading the Book of Bill is one thing, but after, the experience is totally different. But before that, I feel like people trying to pretend the ship is no longer even close to being canon has something to do with them relating it to actually healthy relationships, and because of this, not seeing any sort of confirmation in the nature of these two characters. Before I list the evidence and try to convince you that this is real, let me say something. Billford, in any way or in any form, shouldn't be seen as something to aspire to. The relationship is toxic, one of the characters involved in this ship is a megalomaniac, and the other was a depressed little man when whatever happened between them transpired. So no, this in any way shouldn't be seen as healthy or green or whatever. But I feel like people really shouldn't look too far into this. I mean, to begin, Bill is an alien from another dimension, and Ford is a scientist who is also a criminal in multiple universes. Of course they are not normal. If you would like to get morality into the list, this video will take very long to conclude, so please don't. Now, let's get into the Book of Bill. The Book of Bill makes it clear that the relationship was far away from the walls of just a friendship. You could debate that they saw each other as nothing more than research partners, but I would like to think they would have an intimate connection with one another. Leaving labels aside, both of them seem to be interested in one another during different times of their life. When they first met each other, Ford was the one who straight up idealized Bill, singing prayers, and even straight up desired to have some recognition from Bill's part, made a statues, hung paintings, all of that, while Bill was more than happy to comply and manipulate Ford in every specific and single way he could. In the Book of Bill, we see a lot about how Ford valued Bill's opinions, how he had experienced a miracle as he called it 2 years ago when he met Bill. He literally called himself a cipherholic, how he said he was starting to like Bill and allow him to call him anything. When Fiddleford wanted to prevent him from continuing meddling with Bill, Ford pushed him away and opted to continue his research on the portal. He secluded himself, and even if this was part of Bill's plans all along, Ford's feelings were very real. On Bill's side, he confided Ford with the fact that he still carries a little of his dimension inside his hat, even went as far as to try to comfort him in certain aspects of Ford's lives, even if most attempts ended being counterproductive. That mixed with the fact that they did a lot of couple-like things together, singing karaoke, playing games, spending as much time together as they could, makes things obvious. I'm not explicitly saying that the relationship could be labeled as a romance, but I do find weird the choice of words. One thing led to another when Ron Ford describes what happened during the karaoke night in the Mindscape. How he said, he's gonna. It's weird. See it however you like, but it's still weird. Nevertheless, things go bad as soon as Ford discovers Bill is actually a maniac that wanted to conquer his dimension. From there, the downhill of the roller coaster of lies Bill Cipher had created starts paying back one by one. After Ford discovered everything, Bill started breaking the boundaries he previously had with Ford, and starts stealing Ford's body against his will, getting mad at Ford for ignoring him, and putting post-its everywhere as an attempt to communicate with him. Taking photos to piss Ford, acting by any means like a clingy toxic ex, like Mabel later established. Those are literally the words Alex Hirsch used to describe their relationship countless times, and I feel like people say, this is a metaphor because obviously they were interacting in that way, and it's a scientist and a god. How could you think that way? And I just want to say that the people that say this are literally not understanding what a metaphor means. A metaphor is something to describe a relationship, but that doesn't mean that the metaphor is not real. You can say something like, oh, your lips are red like strawberries. It's meaning that their lips are red. When someone describes Bill as a toxic, clingy ex, it means that he's being obsessive in a romantic way. Yeah, he's not a teenager who is obsessed about his girl because his girlfriend left him. He's a god who is obsessed because his scientist left him just because he didn't want to have his dimension destroyed. And if you want more evidence, I'm literally going to quote Alex Hirsch here. And I'm not even going to read what he said. I'm going to straight up put a video of him explaining Bill Cipher and Ford relationship.
If you're looking for a really, really messy relationship, whether it's between two high schoolers or a trillion-year-old demon and a scientist who is just really wants people to think he's cool and would do anything for it, rather than type in demon, maybe type breakup and see what you see online. Next question.
So yeah, now that you have seen this, we can say that Bill uses a lot the word ex to describe the relationship countless times, even going as far as stating that in public and on the side or Gravity Falls. When you type "oh sadly," the word divorce appears, clearly hinting at how Bill Cipher was coping about finding out Ford wanted nothing more to do with him. Not to even mention that he did frequented Sadleys. At that exact moment, another 1/6er please. For those who didn't see the clues before or saw Bill being overly possessive, this attitude could be a massive change. But the reality is that Bill has always behaved like this, even before. Some examples could be the fact that he insisted Ford decorated his house with things that had Bill's form in it, this being a way for Bill to spy on him. The way he made Ford get a tattoo that he said read as wise one, when in reality it said if lost return to Bill, something that is clearly a thing that is often portrayed during animes or series, like a way to explain how you want to own someone, usually in a romantic sense. I mean, if it's even more awkward when you know that it's written in Euclidean, being that the language of his destroyed home like mentioned, which could only be read by him and a counted amount of people, this coming out as something Bill did only for the meaning rather than anything else. All of these obsessive impulses obviously infuriated Ford, destroying any attempt to fix the relationships, ending with Ford absolutely despising Bill. And for obvious reasons, like honestly, if I were Ford, I would have probably put a limit to Bill long ago, but we know how Ford is and he was straight up obsessed with the guy. As for Bill, his attempts to convince Ford only worsened the relationship. Again, we have weird innuendos of Bill practically putting a love cage to Ford to convince him to give him the code, which could mean two things. He was either trying to convince him by flirting with him and hoping he would spill the code, or seduce him to later manipulate him into giving him the code. Anyway, the only way this could be possible is if there was any sort of romantic attraction dancing between them. And no, I don't mean the sweet type of romance, I mean just the desire to be with someone no matter if it's healthy or not. So, furthermore, Bill had used that same trick as an advice to Gideon to court Mabel. Again, a strange choice of situation. Researching some more, I also find out there is one more deleted scene that wasn't included in the series where Bill is trying to convince Ford to join him. He practically lets him spit on him and doesn't even kill him. He instead transforms him into a gold statue and then keeps him as some sort of trophy. Again, weird. If you see this from outside, one might argue that Bill's fascination is one-sided. However, I would like to argue that Ford might not be that repelled to the idea of Bill as some sort of companion, or at least was. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're giving a lot of ideas and you're leaving a lot of evidence, but you're not backing your evidence with anything concrete. How could we know that Bill and Ford actually care with one another if you're just quoting them? Which is why this section exists. So, I'm going to give all the clues with information, with the pages, with references if you want them. I already said it's going to be at the end of the video. I don't know what else you want from me, but here I'm going to come. In the Book of Bill, we see a glimpse of how Stanford is coping after defeating Bill. Even though the demon's presence is no longer a threat, he still has a constant nagging doubt about whether Bill is truly gone or just playing dead. The son we will meet again, which Bill serenaded Ford with in the episode where Armageddon happens, still lingers in his mind. This could all be a cheap trick from Bill, but we know that his power is ineffective against Ford after all the trouble Stanford went to in order to free himself from Bill's influence. The statement is clear. Ford somewhat misses Bill Cipher, even after everything. And not a miss of, I miss him and I want him to come back, but a more terrifying missing thing. It's like when you have this thing that is constantly boring you or like bugging you. Taxes, I don't know, debt, the anxious dread that you might not be important in the universe, and one day you wake up and it's gone. Maybe you will be very happy, but at the same time you will be like, where did this thing that used to bother me went? Which is how I read this situation, at least in these specific passages. On the other hand, Bill is someone used to spending his days in the therapy prison. Yay, therapy! Perhaps because of this, he seems to be reflecting on his past. Despite this, someone continues to hunt him. Stanford Pines. He even dedicates a whole section to him in the Book of Bill, expressing how good things were before he betrayed Bill, before he backstabbed him. This section is the longest in the entire book, making it somewhat depressing to know that Bill's obsession with Stanford still runs deep. Both characters remember each other, and even though circumstances have changed, their past experiences clearly twisted something within them that can be labeled as strictly platonic, like I have said countless times. They long for one another, and now that they are separated, they reflect on every mistake and choice that led them to this point. It's not surprising that Bill tortured Stanford in the worst ways possible. He did atrocious things, like hurting Stanford's knuckles by smashing down the door to his lab. He climbed to the top of the shack, nearly causing Stanford to kill himself, even though he only intended to scare him. But worst of all, according to Stanford, when Bill called Stanley to say he was going to kill himself, that crossed a line for Stanford. When Bill is confronted about this, he dismisses it, calling Ford a drama queen, and generally dramatic. He remarks, "That fella lives for drama," when he recounts how Ford covered his brain with aluminium to keep the dream demon at bay. Ford states that he no longer feels any particular weight about Bill in the book. He claims to be a recovering cypherholic, and insists that as a reader should not read the book. This whole cypherholic thing clearly is a parallel to addictions. Like I said before, Ford knows that Bill was bad to him. He knows that he was hurting him. But he still longs for him because he found companionship that he couldn't have with any other human. Which is sad, honestly. I kind of feel bad for the dude, but that doesn't mean his situation is different. What caught my eye and my whole attention was actually how, when explaining why someone might want to read the book of Bill, he explicitly lists reasons that have also driven him to seek out Bill during the first time. His last reason states, "Perhaps you're attracted to things that hurt you." He says this, which is something that it's ambiguous, because it struck me that Ford sees his attraction to Bill as something beyond his control. Perhaps a side of him that craves the feeling of helplessness that Bill once instilled in him. It's a toxic behavior that he overcomes by focusing on his family, but it's still there. Another section of the book features Bill explaining his twisted perception of love. While we don't see the family dynamics in Euclidia, we do know that Bill's understanding of love is deeply flawed. It's possible he had no one to explain it to him, since his family likely perished during his childhood. In response to the question, "What is love?" Bill describes it as something humans use merely to procreate. This is a strange perspective, especially in his own words, by saying, "Love is a trick, and worst of all, it's a trick you lay on yourself." We can see how troubled Bill is about this, but it also indicates his denial regarding any romantic feelings he might harbor. It's like Bill is constantly in this paradox of not wanting to get too close to someone, but still wanting to get to know them, to manipulate them. I feel like this is how his whole doom was made with Ford, because he thought, I'm going to try to contact this guy, I'm going to learn everything about him, I'm going to manipulate him, and he's going to build me a portal. And then goodbye, I'm never going to meet him again. The thing is, to manipulate someone, you need to understand them. And for understanding them, you need to actually talk to them, or at least see their memories. Obviously, all of this ended up with Bill kind of understanding Ford in a way that made him feel some sort of connection, I will say, which is actually how I perceived the relationship at the beginning. I was like, okay, this interdimensional being just contacted with a human, and that said human seemed to have a lot of traits in common with that interdimensional being, which is how and why Billford exists in the first place. As I mentioned earlier, another contribution to this whole Billford conspiracy, it's that the advice he offers is, on this specific page of love advices, all of his advices somehow are, creepy and unsettling too, but for some strange reasons, they align with various scenes in which he interacts with Stanford. I'm going to explain this idea a little bit more. So practically, one of the advices, the love cage, could be a prime example. Because there is an instance that certain description of how the love cage works, which is practically holding your supposedly interest individual in some sort of pyramid when you see him trill songs, which is something that literally happens during one of the chapters where episodes where Bill is practically trying to make for side with him, which he does by locking him down in a pyramid and singing him songs. So yeah, that happens. Also, when Bill suggests that vulnerability could win someone's heart, I found it quite amusing, considering that as a transdimensional being, he despises vulnerability. I even remember that at the beginning of the book, when listing his most hideous traits, something that could defeat him, his weaknesses, he gets mad at the reader for trying to learn them, and starts making us read from The Great Gatsby, which he later says that goes back to topic, but still he got mad. So being that it's quite against vulnerability, making that as an advice really made my mind search for examples where he genuinely attempted to appear vulnerable but found none. At least on the series, I tried to see on which occasions did Bill try to appear vulnerable to someone. And throughout his interactions with humans, he always wanted to be perceived as strong, even in his most pathetic state in the Book of Bill. Even at the end, where he admits that he's in prison, in the Terra prison, he never actually says, "Oh, I'm feeling so bad right now." No, he's pissed at his state, but never actually tries to make the reader understand that. There is, however, one exception that I later remembered, and it's the conversation with Ford in which Bill attempts to explain his tragic backstory. Literally, this is a quotation of how Bill sees vulnerability, which, again, his whole Euclidia being a dimension that he destroyed, but it was also his own. I mean, say that however you want it, but it's a tragic backstory. This specific thing was explained to Ford, and by him saying that his dimension was destroyed by a monster. This moment is the only time he reveals any sort of vulnerability, which seems odd, but might have been a way to make Ford understand him, or maybe manipulate him into doing so. Anyways, it was a way for him to actually connect with Ford. The next piece of advice that resonated with me was about good old-fashioned Valentines. In this section, Bill emphasizes the importance of leaving gifts at your partner's doorstep. Among the gifts he mentions are dead rats, which he once gave Ford for his birthday. He literally controlled dead rats and make them form the name Ford. I don't know, it seems too precise to not count it as something that also happened with Ford. Again, this is very weird that all of the love advices are well, not all of them, but most of them are somewhat connected to Ford. I will make you do your own theories, but I don't think I had to spell it out. I know what you're thinking right now. You're probably saying, "Oh, but all of these pages, why, they don't explicitly say that Billford is canon. You're just reading between the lines." Which is why I'm going to stop talking about implicit, evidence of Billford. I'm going to start talking about more implicit media that I found in the Book of Bill from now on, which ends my section of implicit Book of Bill content that canonizes Billford, and now we're going to talk about the explicit details in the Book of Bill. I warn you, the list is long. I think it's more longer than the other one, which I find it very weird that when people try to say that Billford is somewhat canon, they start listing all of the implicit facts and they forget the explicit thing that is the explicit things that are stated in the book. First, Bill frequently implies or states that he and Ford were in a relationship. And I will give this as a joke. I know how sometimes in media it is very funny to see two males flirting with each other, but later they are nothing. Yeah, on Teen Wolf when everyone was shipping Derek and Styles and they were even shipping themselves, but nothing was canonized. Or with the movie of Deadpool and Wolverine that recently came out and everyone was in the cinema saying, "Oh yeah, these dudes definitely have something going on." But yeah, nothing was literally canonized. There is something with these examples that I'm giving. First of all, these circumstances are usually not like set by the characters. There are some exceptions, but it's usually the context that makes it queer or quirky. With Billford, it's not the case. With Billford, Bill and the other characters explicitly say that they used to be in a relationship. And I'm going to start. Okay, so this begins with him mentioning that he visited Force Mines before they were no longer on first frame basis. This might sound as a joke or something, but this actually usually is used to indicate an intimate relationship. I mean, it's obviously seen as some sort of slang for first something basis that usually involves a relationship between two persons that are very close to one another. Be that not as intimate, it can be friends or anything, but it establishes that there is a relationship and then there is some privacy going on between these people. He also constantly refers to Ford as his partner, which again could be friendship, but he expresses that gratitude when Ford is contacting him and saying, "He's my partner." I mean, from the first moment he saw Ford's brain, he was fascinated. He literally said so, claiming Ford was destined for so much more, and then they will make a not so great but perfect team. He doesn't even just say, "Oh yeah, we will make a good team, his brain is fine." No, he explicitly says a perfect team. He wanted Ford from the moment he laid eyes on him, literally speaking, and he even seems to be very confused about how can he connects so much with someone, being that someone a human. As for Ford, he was equally enchanted by Bill from their first meeting, calling it the greatest day of his life. Their initial interaction could be interpreted as flirting on multiple levels. I mean, you just need to read it. I'm literally going to put it right now for you to do it. Do a quick read. I'm not going to give you time to do that because, whatever. But, like, you can pause the video and read it. Like, I just read it like it's a normal conversation and tell me that you don't see any sort of romantic innuendos. Because Bill literally tells Ford he can call him anything except late for dinner, which is a clever line since Bill generally isn't condescending even while manipulating others. When Bill asks if he can call Ford Sixer, this is a unique request because he doesn't ask this for anyone. He's not like, "Oh, Pine Tree," like, "Oh, Dipper, can I call you Pine Tree?" No, he just straight up calls him Pine Tree and doesn't care about his real name. The same for Wendy. He calls him Red. He calls her Red, and he doesn't care about Wendy's opinion about this. But with Ford, no. With Ford, he explicitly asks if he can call him Sixer. With what Ford responds with, "You can call me anything except late for dinner," an obvious remark of something that Bill said previously. And the things start to get a little bit quirky when in Spanish he says, like, on the Spanish translation, he doesn't say, "You can call me anything except late for dinner." No, he says, "Puedes llamarme lo que quieras excepto amor," which translates to, "You can call me anything except my love." And then he starts laughing and says, "I'm joking, I know everyone loves me." It's weird, okay? No, like, I'm not even going to say it's weird. It's like very obvious that they are flirting. This conversation can be viewed through many lenses, but the essence is clear. Like, these two are definitely, like, maybe not hitting it off, but they are flirting. Obviously, after listening all of this, the relationship developed in an unhealthy way. Ford's obsession with Bill quickly surpassed Bill's obsession with Ford, and Ford became so fixated that when Bill left him for a few weeks, he grew genuinely angry, accusing Bill of spending time with another scientist or posing for a tapestry. I actually don't know what he referred to in this segment because he says something like he's very mad at Bill for abandoning him, and he's like, "Where have you been? Why did you visit right now? I could have, where have you been?" Like, he's pained with the idea of Bill leaving him. Obviously, this is painted as jealousy, and it's evident on both sides, as Bill is shown to be quite jealous of Fiddleford. Actually, has been jealous of Fiddleford since, like, ever. He calls him Hillbill, and he's often trying to see that Ford could do the portal by himself. Even destroys, like, I don't know if it's, maybe it's implicit, but Bill literally destroys the gift that Fiddleford made for Ford on Christmas. The Christmas sphere or whatever. Obviously, as things continue and because of unhealthy behaviors, the relationship deteriorated. Ford began to distance himself from Bill until he wanted not just to ignore him, but to eradicate him. When Bill transforms into a zombie to speak with Ford, an important conversation occurs that I will quote directly, which I think will help to clear out all of the missing doubts. If you still have doubts about the relationship being canon, I'm just going to read this very quickly. So, in this, Ford asks Bill, "Why are you doing this? Why can't you just leave me alone?" Even without a tongue, the zombie spoke in Cypher's unmistakable voice. "Oh, come on, Sixer. We both know you don't really want to be left alone. Admit it. You love," again, the love it involves, for no reason, obviously, "how important I make you feel. And I love having a pet human in my pocket. It's a win-win." Again, 2 times the word love is put in there. Let's ignore that for a while to keep reading. "Don't forget which one of us is holding a gun. I warned him, or forewarned him." He grinned, and inhumanly white grin. "Forsy, nobody else really gets you, do they? Without me, you will always feel unseen. Surrounded by dolls who don't recognize your true potential, you have always felt alone in a crowd, haven't you? Who else will give you this feeling again? Even if you got rid of me, you had missed me. Admit it, you had missed me." I hesitated, or Ford hesitated, obviously. "I have missed you," Ford replied. Then Bill Cipher smiled. And that's when Ford answered with this famous quote line, "But my aim is getting better." I blasted the last zombie to the ground, then shoot 2 more times and spat where I stood. I was so exhausted, I could barely stand, but I knew falling asleep would make me his next zombie. I picked up the brain and made my way home as the snow began to fall. I will admit I was pretty proud of my comeback. Pretty sure I heard that from Dad. As I was reading all of this quote, "But my aim is getting better," it started to resonate through my skull until I understood that this was clearly a reference. Even him saying that his combat had come from his dad seemed like it made me itch to know which reference was this, what was Ford talking about. And obviously, this conversation relates to a lot of things, especially Ford's comment about his aim getting better. A clear reference to, I'm going to say it, Season 1, Episode 2 of Gravity Falls.
"Here goes. My ex-wife still misses me, but her aim is getting better. Her aim is getting better." You see, it's funny because marriage is terrible.
Where Stanley uses the joke, "My ex-wife still misses me, but her aim is getting better." And this is obviously a joke, because this illustrates how marriage can be terrible. But again, for this joke to be used, marriage has to happen. And obviously, Stanford is not a married man, but marriage could be compared to romantic situations. And why will he use that quote to relate to Bill? I will say it right now. Because their relationship wasn't platonic. In any ways was it platonic. They fell for one another, were attracted to one another in a very toxic, and in a very creepy kind of way, but the attraction was there. Obviously, after everything, it's Bill who cannot forget about Ford, and the joke starts to be a little bit depressing to say the least, but you understand what I'm getting at. Obviously, these two were not just friends, they were not just partners or scientists, buddies. They had feelings or some sort of attraction to one another, maybe on a first brain basis, like Bill likes to say, but they were definitely not that sort of couple. They were not just friends. In the last pages of the Book of Bill, we get some advice from Mabel for Bill to get over Ford. Mabel tells Bill that he has been acting like a super needy ex, and suggests he go crush on someone else's uncle. How can we say this? How can we explain this? How can we understand why Mabel says that Bill should get over his grunkle? How Mabel says that Bill is an needy ex, if every single evidence that we're given it's pointed that they were in some sort of relationship. And there it is, folks. I don't know what else to say to convince you, but The evidence is there. If you don't believe me, just go read the pages I'm literally showing right now. Like, you have to have a limit into making like, oh yeah, maybe it's canon, and it's canon. Because right now I feel like everything is pointing more in the canon direction. Which again, let's say that it's not. Even if they weren't in a romantic relationship or any sort of, or didn't feel any attraction to one another, the truth is that they weren't just friends. And seeing that from another angle just makes everything lose sense in a lot of specific ways. This is something, and this is the part that I was saying previously, like, I'm going to clarify all of this because I don't want people coming at me and saying, oh, you romanticize a toxic relationship, oh, you should die, or I don't know what you will say in the comment section. But yeah, they are not healthy. They are not in any way healthy. I'm not trying to excuse Bill in any way. I'm not even trying to excuse like why Ford tried to or used to be with Bill. I'm not trying to do that, okay? I'm just trying to put things as they are, and that is that they're clearly canon. People can make fun about it, people can laugh about it, people can make media about it, they can even write fan fictions about them being toxic, and if they are into that, good for them. But the thing that people need to remember is that all of that is fantasy, and it will stay on fantasy, and it will forever be fantasy, because triangles don't speak. And if that's your religion or whatever, then I respect you totally, and maybe triangles do exist. But on this certain situation, if you see Billford as canon, that doesn't make or means that you are on like saying those type of relationships, even if they are definitely fictional, should be promoted. Abuse is not sexy. Using another person is not cool, and you should under no circumstances hurt someone just because you want for them to be your property or anything. Billford, it's not healthy. It will never be healthy, and people should really shouldn't look into this relationship and be like, oh, what sweet guys. Again, it's an AU, and it's like an alternate universe where they are happy, like Mr. Bill Pines, I think that thing is called. Then again, yeah, I understand the hitch, but unless that's not the case, then you should definitely not ship them in that sort of way. If it's canon, you need to understand that they were not healthy. So, why I say they're not healthy, I'm going to clarify this if people still come at me and are like, they are actually healthy. They are not. Bill is truly obsessive, toxic, and all the bad labels around Ford, which should under any circumstances be something to look for. I repeat, you shouldn't look for this. He manipulated Ford constantly and even went as far as hurting him physically too. A fragment of something Bill said to Ford resonates with me constantly. When Bill literally said, "You are my property, don't forget it. The hillbilly abandoned you, your father won't want you returning without millions, you have no friends, and if you die out there in the snow, who would even miss you? Turn on the portal. I had waited too long for this. By the way, I'm sending someone to steal your eyes. That's not a joke. I have a friend that will steal your eyes. You have 22 hours. Don't cross me again." Yeah, there is no way to read this without understanding that Bill was straight up manipulating Ford. Like, in every way. Like, have you seen during this part, the guy barely slept, asleep. He had very big eye bags. Like, no. He was totally using Ford in a very psychotic way. So don't. He said all this and terrorized Ford for decades, which is why the relationship in canon should not be something to idolize. Setting that aside, is it okay to ship them? Which is what I was talking about before. I don't want to get morality in the conversation because things will get bonkers from there, but everyone should be free to use their imagination and free time however they will, as long as they are not harming real people or interacting with ludicrous fan work. And I repeat, fan work, like, I don't want to mention this because I feel like I'm going to get censored, but you know what I'm talking about. You know which things you shouldn't cross. You know which things are just too much. And believe me, an immortal triangle and an old man named Stanford shipping them together is far away from what you should come as like your line, or if you want to put your line to be there and you don't want to like engage in toxic ships, then don't. Like, literally don't. I couldn't care. Like, don't do it. But well, yeah, you know the dates, you should know what should be your line not to cross. But having that said, I see Billford as something that people should interact mindfully, but at the same time, like any other complex chiefs like William and Hannibal, as something to fair play in these things. Like I don't think it's that bad, at least if you're being respectful and mindful about it, then I don't really see the problem. The thing that for me makes Billford enjoyable is the fact that their interactions are funny enough to draw. Like, I see this as some sort of shit ship. I don't know how to call it. Like, I'm not against it. I'm like, yeah, it's canon, so let's laugh about it. Like, after all, people forget that Ford is literally a criminal in multiple like universes. And yeah, Bill is an asshole, like in every single way. And Ford didn't hurt Bill the way that Bill hurt Ford. But they are funny together, okay? And sure, they are toxic in canon, but people have real creativity, and making toxic ships healthy in an alternative universe, like, again, Mr. Bill Pines. I think there is another about Bill Cipher Pines. I don't know, there are a lot of AUs. But shouldn't be as criminal-like as it seems seen by some people in Tumblr or X made it. Like, they are literally throwing heads and saying, like, stop making everything gay! And I'm like, I mean, if you don't want to see it as gay, whatever. So this is the end of the video. With all of this information, I have come to the conclusion that even though Bill and Ford's relationship wasn't in any way healthy, like I said before, and I made a whole segment talking about this, please don't come to me in the comments saying like, oh, you ship unhealthy stuff and you want everyone to like, I don't know, like have toxic relationship. I never said that. Please don't come at me because of that. It was, but you need to understand that it wasn't just a friendship either, at least in my perspective. Like, I know I might come off as a little straightforward and saying everyone like, yeah, they are definitely canon, woo, trenches, woo, die. Everyone can have different perspectives of this. This is just like take it as some sort of, like, I'm trying to convince you to see why people ship Billford. That's it. Like, yeah, in my perspective they are canon. Maybe in your perspective they are not canon, and they are have some sort of brother-like relationship. I don't care. Like, literally, just to have your own ideas. This is just to have the evidence recopulated in a single space and call it I will call it a safe space, but honestly, this is not safe. Whatever. I firmly believe this side, like, they side more into some sort of situationship. I know I said attraction, but again, I really don't believe that in the canon, at least, they ever establish a relationship. Or, yeah, Bill is my boyfriend, and I dated a triangle. I think they were in a situationship. Like, both of them knew that there was something going on, but they never established it. Probably Bill, like, used to joke a lot with Stanford about it, and Stanford will go all red, like saying, oh yeah, science, I'm attracted to planifications, or something like that. I don't know, maybe even at some point both of them felt that way for the other. Maybe between, like Ford going bonkers and Bill threatening him, maybe somewhere in that space they both felt attraction to one another. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they did. Maybe none of this is making sense to you, and you already have your own idea of this. I don't know. We will never know. I will never know, at least. At last, please, if you have any remaining theories, comment them below, and let me know if you enjoyed the video. This is all. Farewells, and now go into the sources. Please don't leave. Check the sources, because I literally owe these people like this video, so don't try to leave without actually checking this. This is important. Goodbye. Farewells.